Welcome back, guys and ghouls, to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, the podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as spooky as we were back in the 80s. I'm your host, Tyler Bentz, and this is your other host,
Woody Brown.
It's looking a little spooky out there.
Dude, perfect.
Yes,
sir.
The
air's a little cooler.
Mm-hmm.
The leaves are changing color.
A lot of gnats.
I got to get the leaf blower out a lot more now. The nights are getting darker earlier, man. And I don't know if you notice this too, but like anytime, this time of year, when the wind blows and stuff, and if you probably remember this from where you used to live, I don't think you have very many pines in your neighborhood now.
I got pines.
But you know, like the wind's blowing and something about this fall weather, it's colder, the moon, you can just see it in the sky, and then you can hear those trees sort of just like creaking. Man.
Ooh.
It really is.
Yeah.
And all that put together means one thing, bro.
Here we go.
It's finally time for our annual October Spooktacular.
Yes, sir. My favorite time of year. My studio is all set up. I got the Christmas lights everywhere. It's ready to rock. I have a bulb that simulates a fire on one corner. I have another bulb that's like purple. We got string lights everywhere. I changed my screensaver to like a spooky forest on my desktop. Yeah, we're in it as far as I'm concerned.
In it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my decorations go, I just the natural leaves. I just use it as an excuse not to have to get the leaf blower out, and it's just part of the look, you know.
Oh yeah, no. I absolutely love it, but God bless these gnats.
Yeah, well, hopefully it cools off and they leave.
That's what I'm hoping.
Every year since we started the show, we've done this October Spooktacular. And if you're a newer listener and this is your first year with us, what that basically means is that we make a commitment to ourselves and to you that throughout the month of October, we're cranking the creepy factor up to 11.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have stories like soaked in horror and steeped in folklore and dripping with that good old-fashioned campfire terror. And like most things, I just love tradition. And this is one of my favorite traditions that we have on the show because, I don't know, man, it's like all year long, I can't wait for this. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, me too, man. Yeah. I mean, the second that it starts the leaves kind of start to change, although I still could use it to get a little cooler in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
But, we're getting there slowly but surely. We are here in the South, so
yeah,
I feel like up north it's already probably hitting below zero, but we're still in around the 80s.
Oh, man. So. Well, it only got up to about 74 over here yesterday.
Is that right?
Yeah. I live higher. I live, farther north than you do, so.
Hundreds of miles.
Hundreds.
Right by the water.
I do actually live right by the water.
Here we go, the bragging.
So today, we're going to kick things off with a story that's not only terrifying in its imagery. I mean, honestly, it might be one of the... It's like when we were kind of coming up with how we wanted to kick off this year, I don't know how or why, but this just popped into my head. And
Brilliant.
It's something that we've talked about doing for so long.
Oh, yeah.
Seemingly sort of, for me anyway, like intimidating, I think, as a topic to go through because there's a ton and it's so well known, I think, especially in this sort of community of any kind of strange, paranormal and haunting type stuff. But it's almost like unsettling in how simplistic it is because, in this season, we're used to, let's say your psycho slashers or your vampires and haunted sort of castles and bloodthirsty beasts and glowing UFOs and strange things in the woods. But sometimes the scariest things you can find are on your doorstep, especially if it's a child. Now think about it for a second. Kids in general are supposed to be sort of like the symbol of innocence and, the future and possibility and all this kind of stuff.
Positive things.
Positive things, right. Yeah. They're curious, they're harmless in a lot of ways, even comforting. But when you flip that on its head And the second you take something that innocent and you twist it and make it sort of off somehow, to me, man, that's where the horror really lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of why I was thinking about this week, but this morning specifically, as I'm sort of building my October movie playlist every day, you really think about it, and it's like this creepy kids has been used as a trope in so much, right? You've got Damien in The Omen.
Yep.
You've got Malachi and the gang in Children of the Corn.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the strange, silent, blonde brood in Village of the Damned.
Dude, that's the first thing I thought of, yeah.
You've got the twins in The Shining.
Yep.
You've got Gage in Pet Sematary.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, and even more modern stuff, you've got Hereditary, Sinister, The Ring.
Yeah, Samara from The Ring.
Oh, The Wing.
From The Wing.
And most recently, one of my favorite movies that you still haven't watched yet, Weapons.
I know. I'm just waiting until it comes down from the $26 price tag.
Yeah, no, it should be streaming soon, hopefully.
Yeah. By the way, not to derail, but I was kind of amazed at how quickly Superman came to HBO.
Yeah, no.
Like that's like so fast.
Yeah, I feel like that's just like the way it's done now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway. Come on, man. You know, we're trying to build an atmosphere here.
Just cut it out. Cut it out.
You can't even mention creepy kids without talking about things like dolls and stuff too, like Chucky and Annabelle even.
Mm-hmm.
Something as simple as an old baby doll with like a cracked porcelain eye staring at you from a shelf at your aunt's house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, am I right in thinking that everyone had that aunt and had that there was a old porcelain doll that somebody stuck their thumb through just sitting up on a shelf? I mean, I did.
I didn't have I had one that like the eyes were like sort of in different directions.
Oh God, even better.
But it was my Aunt Donna, and she had it. Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, Tyler and I have talked about this several times. Even as a dad, there's times when your own kids can be creepy. We've talked about, unintentionally, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about, in the middle of the night, waking up and your daughter's just standing at the bedside. And you're like, huh. I mean, it literally, no joke, literally happened to me last night.
Dude, and it's what they don't realize is they are milliseconds away from being just
Karate kicked right in the face.
Obliterated. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I don't understand. Like last night was a little bit better. You can tell that she's learning. Now I'm talking about my youngest because she was just like in the doorway. But still there's like this little shadow in the doorway.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear a word. I just sensed it and it woke me up.
Yeah. Yep.
And when you sense something and it wakes you up like that, your first instinct isn't, oh, I wonder I wonder what she needs. It's, what monster is about to attack me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my kids have started doing, well, not started, I mean, the last several years, they do that as well, because I've told them so many times, like, do not get near me because I cannot control what I do, like, coming out of sleep. And so they'll do the thing, too, where they'll just, like, stand in the doorway but I mean, it's kind of weird because, like, they're trying to be, like, quiet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're, like, trying to wake you up. So they're like,
hey, Dad. Yeah.
And it's like yeah, you're right. It's like kind of scarier.
What about this? Has this ever happened to you to where maybe your kids are staying with the grandparents and in other words, you're just alone with your wife in the house and in the middle of the night, you think you hear their voice and it wakes you up?
Oh,
that's happened to me before.
Yeah, that's kind of does sound familiar, but
it's weird, man.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Anyway,
kids are weird.
Yeah, okay. And they do funny things, but like I said earlier, when you start thinking about them in a creepy way, if something's just slightly off, it really dials up that terrifying factor. And today, this subject takes that exact sort of primal fear and it dials it all the way up, because what we're talking about isn't just a scary movie trope, isn't just a ghost story that's passed down through folklore. It's a modern phenomenon, but one that we'll learn has been around for quite some time. People all around the world claim to have experienced it. Encounters that leave them shaken for days, sometimes sick and sometimes scarred for life.
Yeah.
Today, we're talking about the mysterious and the terrifying black-eyed kids.
Yeah, this is a really good one. And I'm really excited because it's one of those that like what Woody said at the top, it is a little intimidating because it is kind of like one of those sort of broader topics, which is interesting because on its face, it is relatively like kind of new-ish. I mean, we'll get into like the origins here in a minute, but like, you started seeing it like making the rounds on, I remember it specifically from Darkness Radio. It was like an old school podcast back in the day in like 2016. And then it just kind of like exploded. So then it was like on all of the paranormal podcasts. You started hearing about it a lot. But yeah, it's one of those that it's an interesting phenomenon because I remember just, consuming every single episode, everything that I could regarding this topic, because it was really fascinating. And it was, at the time, like it was new. And even though like Woody was saying before, it's like, the trope of like, taking the innocence of a kid and like kind of like flipping it on its head. Yeah, we kind of grew up with that trope in like movies and stuff. But, this kind of coming into like the real world was really interesting to me. The one thing that I will say that is it's a little bit of a bummer to me when kind of looking back into it now, as far as like researching and stuff, it's kind of unfair because a lot of these stories that I remember that were sort of true encounters back in the day from like Darkness Radio and the Paranormal Podcast with Jim Harold and stuff, back in the day, these were like true accounts. Supposed like David Weatherly was giving you like true encounters with these things. But then now if you go to look, like you see a lot of these tropes, into sort of they kind of like straddle like the creepypasta world, which is a little bit of a bummer. Like kind of the nose.
We'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward.
Yeah.
Because basically what I was going to say is
Did I just ruin that for you?
No. But let's dive into the meat of this and talk about that stuff later. But that is an important.
You can just cut.
No. That's an important thing to talk about because, like Tyler said, this all really starts in the mid-ish 90s is when the first sort of
one, right,
account that we hear about as a public in our modern time, comes out. And so since then, so many things in the world have changed. One of them being it's easier for people to communicate with one another. We talk about that all the time too, via the internet and all that. And so more and more stories have come out. And sometimes, like Tyler was saying, it becomes more difficult to sort of discern, somebody's almost fan fiction about a topic versus a true encounter. That said, let's rewind the clock back to 1996.
We attribute the success. Mankind. You're joining us.
So it's 1996 in Abilene, Texas. It's the middle of the night when a guy named Brian Bethel, who was a young journalist, is sitting in his car. He'd pulled into a well-lit parking lot to write a check. Remember, this is the mid-90s, and this is before Venmo or PayPal, anything like that. And for those of you that remember checks, I still have my checkbook from the 90s. It has my parents' old address from the 90s.
Same.
That's how often I use checks. Anyhow, he's got his dome light on, pen in hand, head down, concentrating on what he's doing. It's a quiet Texas night. Maybe the buzz of a neon sign from a nearby movie theater, but he's alone. And then, out of nowhere, there's a knock on his car window. Brian looks up, and standing there are two boys. At first glance, they seem ordinary enough, maybe 10 to 12 years old. One was a little taller, with dark hair, olive skin, wearing a hoodie. The other one was younger, pale, with freckles. They didn't look threatening. They didn't really even look out of place, but the way that they're standing and the way that they were looking at him, something about it to Brian felt off. The older one leans in and says, "Mister, we forgot our money at home. Can you give us a ride? We just wanted to go see the movie." And Brian says immediately, something about that request sent a jolt of dread down his spine. Not just nerves, not suspicion, but real primal fear. And I want to pause there for just a second because I think we've all had that feeling before. That sudden sort of, this isn't right moment.
Oh, yeah.
It's that thing that we have, I think, within us all, and we end up sort of talking about it when we talk about people who have had any kind of encounter with any sort of anything, whether it's something in the woods, more like a cryptid or Bigfoot, or even just like a wild animal, to that moment when you're in a place unfamiliar, even if you're just filling up your car in the middle of the night at some gas station that you're not used to in a town that you're passing through. Now, I've had that feeling. It was just a homeless guy trying to show us magic tricks, but I'm always on alert,
Yeah, that was still to this day, like, there's something unsettling about that.
Yeah, it's like your rational brain is thinking, Brian's in this moment is thinking, these are just kids, but there's something deeper inside, the instincts that he's got that are just screaming, you got to get out of here. There's something dangerous. And at that moment, Brian had that gut feeling. He later said it was like every fiber of his being was telling him to not let them in.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about so often, that sort of fight or flight mechanism that is just kind of like, it's like embedded deep in our like DNA or our primitive, brain. It's like self-preservation mode. It's like, get out of there,
Yeah, for sure.
And the feeling of dread too is like a very common thing.
Oh, 100%, man. One of the things that he kind of noticed was on the marquee at the time, the movie Mortal Kombat was playing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think at the time that sort of triggered, even subconsciously, his mind to think like, these kids are a little too young to be watching this movie. And also, why are they here by themselves?
Oh, yeah. I mean, nowadays that, Mortal Kombat is, Woody was probably showing his son at like 6,
What, the
7.
new one?
No, the old one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. Dude,
But
tame.
when that came out, though, that was like, it was still
kind of, but I think we all expected it to be more violent because of the video games themselves,
But for a kid, though, it still seems a little.
I was 16 when it came out, so it's like I didn't really. Anyhow, here's the part that really kind of here's the part that really gets me. While the older boy is talking, Brian notices his own hand sort of slowly drifting toward the door lock, almost like he was being compelled to do this, like he's hypnotized.
Yeah.
And just as he realizes what's happening, the older boy adds, "It won't take long. We're just 2 kids. We don't have a gun." Now, what about that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Completely out of place, almost like it was rehearsed, but like clumsy, Imagine a 12-year-old saying to you, "Hey, we don't have a gun." That's not very reassuring, man, It's terrifying, really. The first thing I'm going to think of is, yes, you do.
Yeah, right. It's like, why would you say that?
Now, Tyler would have said, "Oh, cool." And then he would have reached down, tapped the glass and said, "But I do."
Exactly. Tap, tap, tap. Real quick, though, that the interesting thing, too, is I'm glad you said, like, it almost felt like it had been rehearsed.
Yeah.
Because even though this is, Brian Bethel is kind of the...
Just say the godfather of bringing it to light.
Yeah, right. He is the first reported sort of encounter with this. I mean, we'll break down like some other things that may possibly go further back, but he's kind of like the black-eyed kid guy in our modern age. And it's interesting because there's so like, and it sets such a good precedent for like all of the other reports, and that's like such a common thing. Like it's interesting too because like for us, all roads go back to, you know, Sam the Sandown Clown anytime we can.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about even his sort of like the dialogue that's sort of consistent here to where it's like let us use our phone to call our parents. Like it's this very like stilted kind of like clunky sort of like it just doesn't feel natural at all.
Yeah. It's almost like you're talking to somebody where, you know, English isn't their first language. And so it's almost right, but not quite, you know? And it's off just enough that you're like, what?
Yeah. Which, I mean, you know, the comparisons have been made for years, but it's very similar to those like, you know, early 60s Men in Black encounters too, to where it just felt like they're playing the part of like, you know, a government official, or in this case, they're playing the part of like a kid.
A human kid.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. We'll put a pin in that thought for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Brian, trying to shake it off, kind of glances away. And that's actually the moment when he notices that the movie that they said they were going to see, not only was it Mortal Kombat, but it had already started. Right. And so by the time that they got home and back, they'd have missed it entirely.
Yeah.
So when he glances back at these kids, that's when he notices it. Their eyes, black. Not dark brown, not dilated, not shadowed, but solid, inky, pitch black. No whites, no pupils, just voids.
West Borland.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of when the fear really hit him. He described it as this soul-deep dread that he felt. He sort of fumbled his car into gear, mumbled some excuse to them, and the kids' demeanor instantly shifted. Their friendly tone turned sharp and almost demanding. And they said, "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in. We can't come in unless you say it's okay." He slams the car into reverse and sped out of the lot and didn't even look back. And here's the kicker, man. When Brian was one of the first people to ever write about these encounters. Mm-hmm. And he shared the story on early internet forums. Back when stuff like this would spread in small town sort of paranormal circles, not TikTok or creepypasta like Tyler mentioned earlier. And the floodgates kind of opened. Mm-hmm. People from all over started chiming in with eerily similar stories, kids showing up at night, knocking on doors or car windows, always asking to be let in, always with those pitch black eyes.
Another interesting thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I mean, I haven't even looked into him in years, but wasn't he was like a newspaper journalist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he was never like a paranormal guy,
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of like just starting his career and in journalism. And again, this isn't something that he was like, "Ooh, I came up with a story. I'm posting it on page 10 of the freaking Abilene Journal or whatever."
And I think he like sat on it. He didn't even tell anybody for like
2 years. I think it was like 98 when he finally posted it.
Oh, okay. Because it didn't even really hit the rounds until like early 2000s, getting into like 2010.
Yeah.
You know,
think about it. It's hard for us to kind of rewind our minds to that level of communication. But 98 is still like the, dial-up modem.
Oh, yeah.
Computer labs at school, or especially in 99 when I was in college and stuff. That's the only place. Yes, I had a computer in my dorm and also eventually my sophomore year in the cabin that I lived in. But like you just didn't have access to all this stuff. So even though he posted about it in 98, by the time it would take that long for it to become more mainstream in 2000, 2001, 2, 3, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah.
And so once it did, it sort of gained some steam and stuff.
Well, I mean, for example, like, I've told the story on here, like whenever I started having my orbs era, as the kids say, I became obsessed with it. And so the only place that I really could get any sort of traction or like find out any kind of information was like message boards. And so, and I mean, this was like 16, 17 years ago. And, we're well past all of that. But even then it was like nothing was mainstream. I mean, you had like ghost hunters and stuff like that, but any of these kind of like, and that's another thing that I'm glad you said it, it's hard for us to look at this stuff like without looking at it through the lens of like somebody in 2025. But, back then you had your sort of mainstream stuff. It's like, oh, there's like spirits and ghosts, and you have your ghost shows, you have your like Bigfoot shows maybe, but these sort of offshoot kind of like expanded like variations on these things, like like orbs or like black-eyed kids or like stuff like that. Like it just wasn't really like a mainstream phenomenon,
right?
That people even really talked about,
Yeah, which is cool to think about.
Yeah. I mean, like for example, like me, I mentioned before, like 15, 16 years ago, I was kind of early on podcasts, but then it was like Jim Harold Paranormal Podcast, Jim Harold's Campfire, which I actually called in and told my Shadow Man story on. So I'm on an episode years ago. And then Darkness Radio. And like, again, like all these, it would get into some of the kind of like spin-off stuff. But like for the most part, it was just like episode after episode of just like ghosts and haunting stuff, so.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu, is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
It's okay not to be perfect with finances. Experian is your big financial friend and here to help. Did you know you can get matched with credit cards on the app? Some cards are labeled no ding decline, which means if you're not approved, they won't hurt your credit scores. Download the Experian app for free today. Applying for no ding decline cards won't hurt your credit scores if you aren't initially approved. Initial approval will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit scores.
Experian.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 50% off primetime deals and free professional installation. Rules and restrictions apply.
Pretty cool place if you're a Martian.
Or a vampire.
You think you really know what's happening around here, don't you?
Is anyone out there? We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. Now, if Brian Bethel's story gave us the framework for these encounters, the classic sort of black-eyed kid experience, if you will, this next one adds an extra layer of menace. Because while Bethel escaped shaken but unharmed, our next witness, a man named Martin York wasn't so lucky. Martin lived in rural West Virginia. He was the kind of guy who kept to himself, lived a quiet life. One evening, he's at home, relaxing, when there's a knock at the door. And just like Brian, when he opened it, there were 2 children standing there. Again, the description, honestly, is nearly identical, man. One slightly older, sort of taking the lead, and the other younger one sort of standing silently by its side. They asked to be let in, and they said that they needed to use the phone.
Yeah.
Martin later said that from the very first moment, he felt that same inexplicable dread, that primal, gut-level fear that Brian talked about. But unlike Bethel, who slammed his car into reverse, Martin hesitated. Plus, he was at home. He can't put his house in reverse and get out of there.
Right.
Maybe it was because of that. Maybe it was because they were kids in general. Or maybe because his politeness overrode that instinct. And so, he let them in. The kids entered silently, moving almost stiffly or unnaturally. Martin described the room instantly feeling colder and heavier. He pointed them toward the phone, but they just stood there, watching him. And then he noticed it. Those same pitch black eyes. The older one began asking sort of strange questions. Like, this won't take long, will it? Or, you're going to let us stay, right? And Martin said that he started to feel dizzy and weak and realized at that moment that something was terribly wrong. And man, here's the part that really kind of sticks with me on this one. He later said that it felt like they were draining him. Like every minute that they stood there, he was getting weaker.
Right.
Almost like his life force was being siphoned off. And this is where the black-eyed kids differ from a lot of other paranormal encounters. It's not just fear or unease. Witnesses report physical symptoms like nausea, dizziness, headaches, a lingering sense of exhaustion, almost like radiation sickness or maybe psychic vampirism. Martin eventually managed to kind of stagger toward the door and open it, mumbling something about needing to get some fresh air. But when he turned back, the children were gone, completely vanished. And here's the kicker. For days afterward, Martin was sick. He described his skin being pale, his eyes sunken, and this unshakable weakness that clung to him. He told friends it felt like he'd aged years in a matter of hours. And it begs the question, what exactly are these black-eyed kids feeding on? Because think about it. They're not biting him, right? When we think of vampires, of course, we think of, Dracula or whatever. These things feeding off of our life, blood. But there's no physical attack. It's like the witnesses talk about feeling drained, weak, or even depressed sometimes afterward, which lines up perfectly with folklore around psychic vampires and entities that don't need your blood, but they sap your energy and your essence. Which kind of reminds me, man, just to kind of sidetrack into a phenomenon that this made me think of. Maybe not the only thing that we've talked about, but one of them certainly. It just popped in my head, and it might even have been last year. And that is the old hag syndrome, with sleep paralysis, where people wake up, they can't move, they feel like someone or something is sitting on their chest, sucking the life out of them.
Yeah, it's definitely got that like energy vampire, like sort of a newer variation of that is like stealing your louche.
Oh boy.
Which is like sort of your essence, your good vibes, your life kind of thing.
Yeah, wow.
And
I've not heard that term before, but
yeah.
people say, man, how are things going with the show? And I say, well, Tyler's just stealing my loosh.
He's just every week, day in, day out,
man,
he's
he's just
stealing my loosh.
He just consumes my loosh. That sounds, I'm not going to, anyway. And really, man, if you zoom out even more, parts of this, elements of it, kind of remind me of modern abduction lore too.
Yeah.
Think about, like, when you're thinking of UFO experiencers reporting physical after effects like nosebleeds, nausea, disorientation. I don't know. As we're going through these, it's like, are they some sort of energy parasite?
Yeah.
And immediately, I think some skeptics probably are thinking, well, okay, they might have just had the flu or psychosomatic or, but with a lot of the things that we take interest to,
yeah,
if this was just a one-off situation or situations that could kind of sprung up since this had occurred, I would be approaching this in a different way. But like we talk about all the time, one of the things we love is thinking and remembering the world pre-internet. And so far, we've talked about Brian Bethel in the 90s and Martin York in West Virginia. But stories of black-eyed children didn't just appear with the internet. If you dig a little deeper, you'll find that this phenomenon has roots that stretch much further back. Our first stop is a Louisiana farm in the summer of 1923. A woman named Jane lived alone with her husband in a small farmhouse outside of Lafayette. Every night for weeks, Jane would wake up in the middle of the night, frozen. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She could only lie there as a strange heaviness pressed down on her chest. And in the corner of the room, she began to see him. A boy, maybe about 10 years old or so, standing silently, watching her. Each night, he came closer and closer and closer. And when he finally stepped into the moonlight, Jane saw his eyes. Black, solid, featureless. She said it felt like he was drinking her breath. Every morning afterward, she would wake up pale, weak, unable to work the fields. Her husband thought she was losing her mind, as good husbands would. But neighbors...
You got me on that one.
Yeah. I had you on the edge of your seat.
You did.
But neighbors whispered that something darker was at play. Sadly, Jane died later that year, her health declining rapidly despite no clear illness, no signs of anything. And some of the old folks in town said it was because she had let the spirit child in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, drinking your breath, too, that's
I love those kind of descriptions,
cool.
That are, you can like, I don't know. I don't know, it's just terrifying sounding.
Yeah, yeah.
Today, we might be able to chalk Jane's experience up to, like I mentioned earlier, sleep paralysis. And for those of you that don't know what that is, sleep paralysis, put simply and quickly here, we talked about it, I think this time last year, actually, when we covered weeks and weeks of shadow man and shadow people and that phenomenon. But sleep paralysis essentially is a condition where your body sort of locks down during your REM sleep, but your mind wakes up. Right. And it's
like your body is flooded with a chemical that like sedates you, basically.
Yeah. Like those fainting goats or whatever. I think we brought that up too.
Yeah, right.
And it's like you can tell what's going on around you, but you can't do anything about it. And we just talked about the old hag, but the shadow people encounters surround this phenomenon as well.
Another thing that, I mean, I bring this up because of like my own, for our old school listeners, one of the scariest things I've ever encountered is I had a shadow man encounter years ago. I think it's on, is it our first Spooktacular Halloween episode?
Yeah, maybe.
But one of the things that's really interesting about it and it's super, super common with like abduction stuff, with other, shadow, like all kinds of like other encounters is, it's probably the most scared I've ever been in my whole life. I'm a kid, obviously. So, there's that aspect of it. But then, for some reason, I just like wake up. So it was like, I still managed to like fall asleep, even though I'm like just in absolute like terror. I can feel like, this like sweat in my hair, like pouring down my face. I'm so hot because I'm afraid to move out of the covers. But yet somehow I fell asleep. And I wonder if that is like I wonder if I may have brought it up on that episode, but I do wonder if that response, that sort of physiological response, is something that our brains or our bodies do on their own, like to keep us away from stress, or if it's something that's like a byproduct of these entities, if you will. You know what I mean?
Or if it's like the final, like it's either your body's so exhausted from them zapping your energy that you just pass out and fall asleep, or it's sort of their final move,
Oh, right. Yeah.
Knock them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest sort of difference so far in your experience, but then other people's old hag or shadow person encounters, while there's some similarities here, you've got the paralysis or maybe after effects physically, like not feeling well, all that stuff. But it's the child figure, right? It sort of stands or makes it stand apart. But something else, too, that I think you may have noticed, listeners, is this strange need for an invitation.
Right.
It sounds familiar
Yeah.
to a lot of things, but if you go further back from, I think that story was 1923, right? If you go further back into some folklore, like European folklore, it kind of reminds me in a sense of the changeling myth.
Yeah.
The Fae.
Yep.
According to legend, the Fae would steal healthy human babies and then leave behind their own offspring. These like pale, sickly children who would wither away in the human world.
They're basically like little old goblins in disguise. Yeah.
And they often had unsettling eyes, odd mannerisms, and were said to feed off the energy of the household. Kind of reminds me of this in a way.
The other thing that kind of reminds me of too is, we've talked about it before. The classic one is the phantom stranger sort of idea. It's in old, some castle off in like, Europe somewhere. There's like a big banquet and this like, dark stranger kind of appears and he's, reveling, or he's like, kind of mystifying everybody with all these stories, and he's super charismatic. And then he goes to leave and they see that like he has like hooves for feet, or there's like something off that it's almost like part of like, here on earth, like nature's protocol that like if any of these things are like sort of imitating or in disguise, if you will, it's like there has to be something that's like not 100% on. And so I wonder if like the black eyes, if that's like a part of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, I think we brought up I think there was something in the accounts of, or in the stories of the account of Saint Germain, right? Where they would notice things like that as well.
Exactly.
Which perfectly segues us into, if you go back to the Victorian era, right? They also had their own version of this in newspapers and penny dreadfuls, which is hilarious because that was on top of mind when you mentioned that. Yep. You find these stories of strange children lurking outside of windows, again, pale, hollow-cheeked, staring silently at families inside. They were almost always described as needing to, you guessed it, Frank Stallone, I'm kidding, needing to be invited in, just like vampires were. I mean, anytime I hear that invited in thing, I always think of vampires. We talked either on the Patreon or on the show, I can't recall right now, but of the Michael B. Jordan movie.
Come
on.
Why are we missing this?
Because we're old and can't remember things. Sinners.
Sinners, right.
Yeah. And I just, that concept has always been interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's often sort of explained as a moral tale from back then, a warning to keep to keep the house pure and not to invite strangers in from the London fog. But when you lay it next to these modern Black-Eyed Kids accounts,
yeah,
the DNA of similarity is there.
Yeah, it overlays like pretty perfectly. To me, that's the thing that like I feel like the good and the bad part about you and I is like it's hard for us to like pin down stuff, but the thing that we're good at is like sort of wrapping all these things up under the same sort of umbrella. And like it's like I think when we say like vampires, I don't know that they're just like that thing. I kind of think like whatever these things are the same as the Black-Eyed Kids, and they're just like that's just kind of the byproduct of like whatever bigger picture they sort of fall into. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one of our favorite things to do always is to talk about ties to our North American ancestors here.
Mm-hmm.
And even in indigenous stories across North America, man, they mention something similar. In some traditions, there are tales of childlike spirits who appear on lonely paths, asking for help, luring travelers into danger. Sometimes they'll lead you into the woods where, you'd vanish forever. Other times they were said to be spirits of the lost children who'd died young and now sought to trick the living into joining them. It's the same sort of elements, man. Child form, luring people in, and the danger aspect.
Yeah.
The commonality being, it's always children. There's always that sort of off-kilter presence, always needing an invitation, leaving people sick, shaken, or drained. And, we kind of went through different periods of history, but I think we should dive into some sort of modern variants and other cases that I found to be interesting and equally terrifying.
We'll continue after these messages.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
The new Popeyes and Hot Ones menu is the definition of fire flavor. We've got the sizzling sriracha dippers. 10 out of 10.
Time to take it up a notch with the smoking Rojo chicken sandwich.
That's so hot, but it's so good. Now onto the daring dab ghost wings. Yep, there it is. I love the spice level. Attempt the Popeyes and Hot Ones menu in stores, our hottest collaboration yet. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Limited time in participating U.S. restaurants.
I'm Scott Hansen, host of NFL Red Zone. Lowe's knows Sundays hit different when you earn them. We've got you covered with outdoor power equipment from Cobalt and everything you need to weatherproof your deck with Trex decking. Plus, with lawn care from Scott's and, of course, Pit Boss grills and accessories, you can get a home field advantage all season long. So get to Lowe's, get it done, and earn your Sunday. Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. So, at this point, we've talked about Brian Bethel and Martin York. But since the 90s, reports have poured in from all over the world. And not all of them fit into the sort of two kids outside the window template, but some are even kind of stranger, man. The first one, I don't think you had, when I mentioned it earlier, before we hit the record button, I don't think you've heard of this one, which rarely happens.
Yeah, I'm excited.
This is called what some people call the fiery red-eyed kids.
Yeah, I have no idea what this is.
These reports usually surfaced online, often kind of lumped in with the black-eyed kid sightings. Instead of pitch black eyes, though, witnesses describe kids whose eyes glow blood red, like embers or brake lights. One man swore that he saw two kids with burning red eyes standing at the edge of his property late one night. They didn't move, they didn't speak, just stood there staring before vanishing in an instant. And of course, some people argue that these are separate phenomenon. Others say that they're just a variant, maybe the same entities showing a different mask, so to speak. Either way, if a kid shows up at my door with glowing red eyes, I'm not gonna, stick around to debate taxonomy.
Yeah. Well, also, what is the other thing that we bring up almost every episode that this kind of sort of is in the same category as?
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of like disembodied voices.
There it is.
Yeah. And this is the, at this point we should just be sponsored.
We really should. Tim Marchenko.
Yeah, Tim Marchenko, Disembodied Voices. If you don't have the book, you got to get it. It's one of the best reads that we've ever had.
Yeah.
But yeah, it talks about things like this. And it talks about the use of the entities. He basically documents throughout, history, but also throughout the world, this tie to entities utilizing children's innocence, the perception that we have of children's innocence, to successfully lure either other children or adults into these dangerous atmospheres, environments, and ultimately, to their own demise, really.
Yeah.
Which is just terrifying.
Yeah, it's like Woody was saying up at the top. It's like, kids represent like, hope and innocence and this positive kind of thing. And so that idea of like looking out your window and seeing, it's like a little kid late at night by himself and, at the edge of your property, it's scary because of, movies and culture and stuff that we've sort of consumed. But, back in the day, it would be like, oh man, I got to get out there and, protect this kid, see what it's about. Like, get him out of the woods because, that's where like danger is, So, I mean, it is like the perfect sort of lure, if you will.
For sure. In the woods, but also in the urban setting.
Yeah, right.
Even being in a parking lot like Brian Bethel was, I think nowadays I'm speaking about myself. There's folks out there that wouldn't be. But nowadays, anybody's knocking on my car door window.
Yeah.
First off, I'm not rolling it down. But second, I'm thinking, okay, I'm about to get carjacked. So, But also, you've been if you see somebody that's around 10, that's around the ages of our kids, you would feel like in a parking lot at night, you would probably want to step up and help them. It's just an easy bait.
Yeah,
tactic, right.
Right.
I guess maybe more so in the woods because, someone being lost in the woods is pretty terrifying. If you're in a sort of urban setting, you can at least be like, okay, well, let's go find a phone or let's take you to the security guard at the mall, whatever it is.
Right.
Out sort of more rural or remote, it does increase that sort of, hero aspect, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, though, the next two sort of encounters are in that type of setting, more rural. In this one specifically, it's in the UK, amongst these isolated cottages on the English countryside where folks have reported hearing knocking late at night. One account describes this elderly couple in Shropshire. I'm sure I said that incorrectly.
Sounded great.
Lauren, please write us and let us know how terribly I pronounced that. They heard these 3 steady knocks at the door. Well, they opened it, and there they were. 2 children standing there in the dark. And before the husband could even ask what they wanted, the children were gone. Get this, man, no footprints. Equally terrifying, no sound of retreating steps. Just poof, gone.
Wow.
Now, this kind of also directly ties into some English folklore like phantom knockers or fey tricks, and even this case called the Cannock Chase report that we'll get to in a second. But same kind of deal, you know, when you're in these remote areas. I think back to, I stayed in this cabin in LJ, Georgia. We were filming a commercial for LJ, actually, and our buddies at Sozo Bear cast me and my family to be up there. One of the benefits was that we got to stay in this cabin. Now, this thing was remote, but it was on this long sort of dirt road that was electronically gated, and so no strangers could just drive up on it. You had to have the code to get back there if you were coming by vehicle. But there was no one else around, man. I mean, literally, you're just out in the middle of the woods. And even as a parent, you start to think, like, what if someone just knocked on the door? You know? I'm in this strange place. I don't really know who the closest neighbor is necessarily. I'm here with my family. Cell phone service is spotty. What if someone just knocks on the door?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this reminds me of.
Yeah, because you started thinking like, well, it's either one of a few things. It's either, you know, somebody is sort of stranded out in the elements, you know, out late at night in, you know, sort of the woods or whatever, and like I need to help them. Or, you know, sort of the follow-up thought is like, you know, why is there someone, like the only other reason would somebody is here to like do me harm or to like rob me, or, you know, so it's like, it's very two sort of polar opposite things. But, you know, that's where like it being a kid is like, you know, it's kind of the workaround to like get you to open your door.
Yeah. And it sets up like the perfect scary movie, you know, as a decoy to utilize. I mean, even in like, take the paranormal aspect of it. Just let's say there's just like a group of meth head people out in the woods that have a family. They send their kids up, the kids knock on the door, meth heads come in, hold you up, you know?
Yep.
This is kind of the environment that happens here in this Vermont case, where a man and his wife were staying in this remote cabin deep in the woods, right? It's the middle of the night. And all of a sudden they hear pounding on the door. Not like polite knock, 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 but pounding. So they, you know, go to the door, they open it, and there they are. 2 children standing in the snow. No coats, no shoes, just staring at him. He said immediately his dog just went berserk. And, you know, baring its teeth, trying to attack the door. And, you know, there's something that is, you know, our human instincts we talk about in this show, but again, in other shows, I think are so sort of repressed, specifically in comparison to a domesticated dog, for example. They're still close enough to that wild form of their biology that they're able to sense that stuff a lot better. Right? And so, just like I think both of us would have done, he trusted the dog and he just slammed the door shut.
Yeah.
When he did that, instantly, the power in the cabin went out. Generator and all. They had a backup generator. Boom. Didn't work. Everything off.
Wow.
He later said he could still hear the kids outside sort of circling the house, tapping on the windows.
Man.
They stayed up pretty late and eventually fell asleep. And by morning, no one was around.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Well, actually, I take that back. I was about to say, I don't know that I've heard a story where any of this happens in the daytime, but I do have a story that we'll save till later that actually does happen sort of in the afternoon.
Okay. So that's in the sort of rural setting. Let's get a little bit more into the urban setting. Now, this one, a man is staying in a hotel in Texas. Okay. He wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of tapping on his window. Which, okay, not the end of the world, except that his room was on the 5th floor.
Oh, whoa.
So he pulls back the curtain, and this is, dude, come on. There are 2 kids outside staring at him.
Like on the roof?
On the 5th floor, dude. He said, no, not on the roof, but just like outside the window. He said that their eyes were solid black. He blinked, and then they were gone. Now, this is the one so far where skeptics would be like, okay.
Right.
Making it up.
Yeah, this,
you know
this
I mean?
is from like a horror. This is
right. It sounds like it was taken straight from the, what's the movie I'm thinking of, man? Vampire movie, Salem's Lot, or not Salem's Lot.
Well, Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot has that, but what's the one, man, with the teenagers and the girlfriend, and then like his buddy turns into a vampire.
Oh, like
is that with an F?
You're wanting to say Frighteners, I know, but it's
not. No. Fright Night.
Fright Night. That's it. Yeah. There's also was it my best friend's a vampire?
I mean, all those, even Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Remember, like David Arquette turned into the vampire.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, you know, this is the story where it's easy to kind of be like, okay, this guy was just like sleeping. He heard a moth tapping on the window, which happens at my house all the time, dude, by the way, because I live sort of, you know, more wooded area.
And your wife loves
like
it.
Watching TV and you just hear like a up against the window. I'm like, what the heck is that? So I just flick on the lights and you just see a moth just like tapping at the window. Yeah, my wife hates them. Mm-hmm. So this one, I get it. It's easy to sort of say, this guy's making it up. He had a hallucination. He was in the middle of a dream and all that. But again, the imagery that this account has, and if you could imagine just for a second that it was real, it's just terrifying, because then it sort of begs the question, well, I mean, are they able to just reach you no matter where you are?
Yeah. Well, but also, just before we move on, I think it's interesting that, like, okay, again, like, let's suspend our disbelief and say, okay, well, maybe this was real and maybe they were flying. It's strange to me that they have the ability to fly, but they still need your permission to be let in. Like, that's crazy, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And like we always talk about with any of these scary things, you know, we like to give ways to defend yourself kind of thing. You know, if they're real, hey, not all is lost. Do this. First line of defense, don't invite them in.
No.
Don't even answer the door, bro.
Although that idea too, that like in a lot of these cases or reports, you, like even with Brian Bethel on the the first one, is like, even like without his like sort of knowledge almost, it was like his hand was like sort of sliding to the door handle. Mm-hmm. So like there's like some kind of like
mind
psionic
control,
thing happening. Yeah.
Which is, man, it's super terrifying.
Yeah.
This one, a woman was loading her car, once again, late at night, and it's after, she's at the mall, this mall in Virginia, and it's after the mall had closed, and 2 boys approach her. They're pale, dark-haired, and dressed oddly formal for kids their age. And they said to her, "We just need a ride. Don't worry. We don't have a gun." Again, this same bizarre phrase from Brian Bethel's encounter. She said that she nearly unlocked the door, but her hand froze. She felt nauseous. Suddenly, her body was screaming at her not to let them in. She looked up, black eyes. She dropped her bags and ran into the mall. The security cameras, which people reviewed, apparently, because she reported it to the security guards, saw nothing.
The other thing that we should mention is usually like the clothing is like, and again, this is where sort of my skepticism kind of comes. Like some of the clothing you'll hear reported as almost like sort of vaguely like Amish. Like it's sort of the Cadillac or the suit version with like the Men in Black. It's sort of very nondescript. There's no modern like logos or anything like that. But you see this sort of like slightly old-timey sort of attire, but then also, and I would say more than not, you usually like either one of the kids or both of them will have like hoodies on. And it's usually almost what I believe is to like sort of conceal the black eyes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's just, very sort of nondescript, like jeans, black hoodie, nothing that you would be like, oh, he had a bright yellow Charlie Brown shirt,
Right.
You never really see that.
Right. In Cannock Chase in the UK, again, not sure if I pronounced that correctly or incorrectly. Beautiful. It's in Staffordshire, England. For years, people have reported seeing strange, pale children wandering the woods out there. They're usually described as gaunt with sunken eyes. But in the last decade, the reports have taken a darker turn because they'll have black eyes. People say the children cry out for help. Just talked about this, luring hikers deeper and deeper into the woods. And these people will then vanish without a trace.
Yep.
Thinking immediately of will-o'-the-wisps, fae, and again, these black eyes. Now, for credibility's sake, there's 2 encounters that I had to write down and talk about. We love these. In fact, gosh, I think we did 2 weeks of them. Yeah. And that is when we have an encounter described by a police officer or a soldier. And I've got both. First, let's talk about the police officer. He was sitting in his patrol car late at night on this lonely stretch of highway, and then 2 kids appeared in his headlights, standing shoulder to shoulder and kind of on the shoulder of the road. So he rolls down his window to ask if they were okay. They approached, but silently. And then that's when he saw their eyes, black and featureless. He said that his entire body broke into a cold sweat. There's that instinct again, right? Yeah. He slams the cruiser into gear and drove off, not even filing an official report for fear of ridicule, of course, and just tore out of there. Never saw him again, nothing. But haunts him to this day.
Wow.
Then this is in Afghanistan. Some soldiers in Afghanistan have reported seeing childlike figures near remote outposts at night, in areas where no local kids should have been. Again, they describe them as pale, oddly dressed, and staring with these pitch black eyes. In a war zone, of course, where paranoia and just alertness can kind of run high and sort of, there's that crossover of paranoia and being alert and stress and sleep deprivation and stuff. That can sort of maybe fuel these types of sightings, according to like skeptics and stuff, but multiple reports surfaced describing the same exact thing. They would appear at the edge of floodlights and vanish when approached, and leave the soldiers feeling shaken and sick.
I mean, you know where my head's going on this.
Oh, yeah. I wrote it down.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say it.
Yeah. I know exactly where your head's going with that. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a couple other variants, like you've got the phantom hitchhiker folklore. If I think back to, so many times on our show, I'm always like, everything seems to have happened to Tyler. He's got a shadow person. There's orbs flying around. There's all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, nothing ever happens to me. And then...
No, you
I know. I had like a phantom hitchhiker.
Yeah.
And if I rewind, and if you haven't heard that story, it's our very first Halloween episode, or Halloween Spooktacular, which is the sort of finale of our October Spooktacular.
Yeah.
Of the first season is where I tell that story. And I never looked at. I don't remember his eyes, so I I
Interesting.
don't remember. But he wasn't wasn't a kid. I just it's interesting.
One of the things that I think is interesting is so I was able to find that episode, that original episode, which I can't remember. I mean, it's 2016, Darkness Radio, and it's David Weatherly, and I think he had just come out with his first book about the Black-Eyed Kids, which it's like Strange Encounters. I'm probably way off, but something like that. And he tells a story that was sent in to him about this lady in Australia. And again, all of this is the stuff that we love. We love the fact that like you're seeing this similar sort of behavior in Afghanistan, in, Ireland, in the US, in Australia. And there was a woman, and I wrote this down. She was an Australian photographer, and she was out taking landscapes, I believe, and she saw like a figure in one of the landscapes, and she was taking pictures of it. And then, she started walking like closer and closer, and then the figure started walking like to her, like turning and walking towards her. And as she got closer up to it, I believe it was like in the late afternoon, so it would have been around like the daytime, and she noticed that it had like black eyes, and she immediately felt that the same kind of thing, like the dread, that fight or flight mechanism was like, get out of there, danger, danger, danger. And I thought I even like back then, like I remembered it when I listened recently, but I remember like even in 2016, I remember being like, whoa, that's interesting. The kid walks up to her and says, we don't like image takers. And then, she turned and like quickly started walking away, and then, rushed to her house. And then like she felt like she was in true danger. And again, this is just a kid, but she has like such an overwhelming, just sort of, primal feeling that like I am in true danger of death or whatever, Yeah. And so she immediately called her boyfriend. Her boyfriend came over. But part of the story is that she had like, she would later go on to like counseling, and it took her years to like kind of be healed of all this. And I mean, basically she had like intense PTSD, like to the extent of like a soldier coming back from serving in war, like something like that. Like it was so intense that it was like just straight up PTSD. Like she, couldn't sleep. Every night she's just plagued with this image of this, random little kid.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We don't like image takers. I just think that's
it's creepy, dude.
Yeah, it's weird. And it kind of sounds old too. Like it feels
other timely.
Right. Yeah. It for some reason it took my mind to that idea that, the indigenous people, Indians, believed, at the sort of the onset of like photography and stuff, they believed that, pictures were able to like, capture your soul, or they were able to like take parts of you, if you were sort of photographed. And so I don't know if there's like something to that, if there's any kind of like relation, but I do think it's really interesting.
Whoa, maybe what if?
We will return after these messages.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures.
From another dimension, another world, I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
This is Joshua Cutchin, and you're at my home for weirdness. That would be rad.
What if it was when, for every picture that you're taking, right, you're capturing a piece of a soul or whatever, and the black-eyed children are like the embodiment of that, and that's why they don't like image takers, because they know that there's going to be other trapped kids like them. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Which brings me to the point of our show, I think, where let's talk about some theories and
yeah.
interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've heard the stories. We've got Brian in Bethel, Texas in 96.
Yep.
We've got Martin York, that was energy drained by the psionic vampire in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Jane in 1923, Louisiana. We've got the Canuck chase in the UK, soldiers in Afghanistan, and even fiery red-eyed kids. But the real question here, man, is what are they?
Yeah.
So the first sort of theory that I want to kind of go through is, and probably the most popular one in paranormal circles, I bet, is that black-eyed kids are some sort of demonic entity.
Yeah.
Because, again, they can't come in without permission.
Mm-hmm.
They inspire this overwhelming feeling of fear and dread. They leave people drained, weak, and spiritually shaken.
Yeah.
It's kind of classic demon behavior, right?
Yeah, it really is. Which, you know, like I said at the top, I think us as humans, we have to just to be able to sort of process things that are kind of out of the ordinary. I think, and, you know, I mean, maybe it's complete fiction. Maybe all this stuff, maybe the lore of like the vampire, maybe like none of it had anything to do with being steeped in reality.
Mm-hmm.
However, I believe there's something to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That at least inspired the fiction that we all, you know, have grown to love. But I do think that, like, again, I don't think it's just like, oh, these things over here are vampires and they're separate from everything else. I think that a lot of these things fall under that same umbrella as like I believe the black-eyed kids. Again, I don't think it goes the other way though. I don't think like, oh, well, here's a black-eyed kid and he has to have permission to be let in, so therefore he must be a vampire. I'm not saying that. I think that they're just all kind of the same like thing. Like, and one of the interesting things that I thought listening to this episode of Darkness Radio, because David Weatherly was the guest, and he's like a paranormal researcher, really interesting guy, really great like researcher. He's kind of like a Nick Redfern or like one of those kind of guys. And I found it really interesting though that even in 2016 they asked him, they were like, what do you think this is? Do you think it's like a demonic thing? Do you think it's some sort of modern retelling of, you know, the vampire mythos? And he said, no, I think there's something about him that is like interdimensional, which I found really interesting because, you know, John Keel, like the Mothman prophecies, that guy, his full belief in like the Mothman and the Indrid Cold and all that kind of stuff was that there was an interdimensional element to it. And so I find that really interesting. And I think that may be true, or that may be like one way to kind of explain it, which is also sort of fuels my belief that, like, you know, the fae and fairies and like that kind of thing,
right.
I think they're also either always existing in another dimension, but yet we're able to like see them and they're able to still kind of operate in our reality, or they're able to like sort of, you know, blink in and out, like, you know, across like dimension.
Right.
You know, and so again, I think it all kind of falls under this one umbrella, but there's something about it that, am I allowed to say like what I?
No, not yet, because we're going to get to that.
Okay. But I do think there's something about a like contractual sort of exchange. Like you have to like give them permission and you have to ask them to come in. There's something about that just feels, you know, kind of like what I was saying before about, you know, that idea of like the dark stranger, the phantom stranger that comes in, but there's something not quite right. Like he has you know, his hand has like, you know, 6 fingers, or he has like hooves under his long coat instead of feet, or black eyes, or what have you. It's almost like to be able to exist in this reality, they have to have something that like is a tell that like gives them away. If people are like noticing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's almost like that within itself is almost like a contract with our reality, you know, to be able to exist. And so like I feel like there's something about them to where they have to play by like a certain set of rules that to me is probably the most interesting thing. I mean, even more than like the black eyes. Like I think there's something in that that's far more interesting.
Yeah, and on this aspect, like the paranormal, or I should say demonic sort of theory, you know, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's actually sort of this invitation idea, having to invite something in. You know, yes, it's present in sort of the vampire lore, which we'll talk about literally next, but in a more spiritual sense, I don't know that that's necessarily in the Bible, that you have to invite it in. But as Christians, it is sort of like a well-known thing that, like in terms of like the demonology aspect, that you have to sort of consent to be entered or possessed or whatever in some form. Now, sometimes I think it's by accident, you know, and that's why we're talking about those things about, hey man, I'm not messing with a Ouija board.
Oh yeah,
you know, because you could inadvertently be opening that door, inviting that entity in by doing X, Y, or Z. It's not like a physical, like, come on in. You know what I mean? You might not be saying that out loud, but by your actions and the things that you're doing, you're inviting it in. Anyway.
Yeah, but I think that's still it's sort of like a real time like transaction.
Yes.
Like for example, I believe that when I believe there's something in this that is like still tied to, even though like with this particular situation, it wasn't like an intentional thing, but like for me with like the orb thing, I became so, and I've said this numerous times, but I became so obsessed with this. Like I said at the top of the show, with like diving into every message board I could find or anything like that. Like, but I became so obsessed that I believe that like I opened myself up to something, you know, malevolent that, and you know, then it became something else. There was these sort of flashes of light that my wife and I both saw. And with that, you know, it, like that's all that it was. It was these sort of flashes that would flash like across the room. And it was one of the most scary things that I've ever felt. And truly like it, I mean, kind of like with the Shadow Man encounter that I have, is like, it was this feeling of like dread, like to the point of, you know, I've told Woody that like, I think there's something like missing in my brain to where there's like a fear sort of mechanism that I don't have, which is probably to my detriment, really. But like, you know, I've never been. I could just walk into the woods at night. I could walk into my basement at night with the lights off. Like it, I just don't get scared with like the normal kind of thing. But in this particular situation, I was so scared that we ended up sleeping like with the lights on, and like that's something that just. Like I never in a million years would I sleep with the lights on.
Yeah.
But it's like that feeling of like pure dread. But I bring that up to just say that like I think you can open yourself up to things, and maybe you don't like consciously mean for it to be intentional. I think there's still like a sort of a transaction or a contract kind of being made by your behavior.
Yeah, that's what I was.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That was a long way to say that.
Long way to say hey, Woody, I agree.
No, but I mean,
I know. I'm just kidding.
I think it was, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And I think, you know, as silly as and there's probably people rolling their eyes right now, but I mean, that's kind of like the warnings that our parents told us about when you know what I mean?
Right.
They just didn't know it. You know, they were talking about the same thing. They just didn't know it. So moving into the second theory that we kind of brushed over is more of the like sort of vampiric or psychic vampires. Again, we're not talking about Bram Stoker here. We're talking about even older, more folkloric versions, being that they feed on energy, not blood. You know, it reminds me of the movie.
What We Do in the Shadows.
No, Life. What is it called, man?
Oh, is it Life Force?
Life Force. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a great one. So again, Martin York experiencing that, you know, sort of being physically drained. It ties into the changeling myths and just that idea of it being some sort of energy parasite, not just there to kill you, but just to feed off of you. And I think maybe that's what happened to the lady Jane in 1923.
Yeah, right.
In Louisiana, is finally maybe there was no food left.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what's interesting? I mean, man, we are giving a lot of props to Darkness Radio today, which is a podcast that I haven't thought of. In the last few episodes, I think I've brought it up. But I haven't even thought of this show for years and years and years. But I do. It's really interesting because I remember there was also an episode where a guy, there was something about like I mean, I would never be able to find this episode because I have no idea. It was just like a listener, like a call-in story. But this guy had gotten like really big into like sort of like, opening his like Kundalini and like opening your third eye and this very sort of, gets into like yoga and like deep kind of like the ritualistic sort of practice of that. And so like the Kundalini exercise is like, it has to do with like breathing and like you're kind of like, I mean, to me, it's just another way of opening yourself up to not great stuff. But he did that, and it was, again, it could all be fake, but he was talking about how after he did this, he was able to see these like entities on people. So he was able to, basically he could see when these entities were like draining people, almost like what you said, like a parasite. And he said he was in Walmart one night and he happened to like look over and there was a lady in the line that it looked like she just had this like grotesque, like deformed thing, like just kind of hanging off the back of like her head and her shoulders. And she just looked like kind of lethargic and just out of it anyway. But he said that's when he came to the realization that like, oh, I think what I'm looking at is like somebody who is like, whether you want to say like demon possessed or oppressed. And it's like a parasitic kind of relationship to where they're like kind of hanging on you and you're not going to get rid of them. Like they're draining you at all times.
Man.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, it could all be fake, but I think of that.
Never know.
Yeah.
Also, like, what have I got hanging on me? Anyway, the next sort of theory is more of, well, basically some believe that the black-eyed kids are actually alien-human hybrids. They've got the oversized eyes, that are dark, odd, sort of stilted speech patterns, strange compulsions that witnesses feel like mind control. I mean, they do sound a lot like classic alien gray encounters,
Yeah.
And maybe it's just like, okay, these aliens are like, well, let me see, let me use some of that stage makeup. Pop, 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 pop.
Right.
Make them, it's like they put on this like quote unquote human suit. They're smaller in stature, reportedly. Maybe they seem like kids.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying? And maybe to like let's just say a foreign body like an alien or even somebody from another dimension. Maybe they think, oh, smaller humans dress similarly to larger humans.
Right.
And so that's why they're dressed, quote unquote, strangely. They're wearing suits and stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
I
mean, or which, again, we're sort of unable to like separate these things, or like stories of like the Fae and stuff to where these people, and again, we're talking like ancient, early, like Gaelic, early Ireland and Irish stories to where they talk about, being taken to fairyland, and they talk about these fairies are these not quite like what we imagine with like Tinkerbell and stuff, like the non-Disney-fied version. But they talk about these beings that, they look kind of like children. They look like teenagers, but they're, thousands of years old, that kind of thing. And so so maybe there's some aspect of that even in them being like childlike.
Right.
Like, I'm glad that you said that. Like, they're actually just little like people. They're not even kids.
Yeah, physically in stature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another theory is, of course, that they are spirits of the dead. Okay, that maybe they died tragically and now they just kind of wander the earth. And so that's one. Maybe my least favorite.
Yeah, me too.
What are you? When when did you run into Will Smith? Like, what did you need, man? What you got?
No. I was saying that's my.
What did you
here? Take that again. Say
no way, dude.
Son of a.
That's
No.
there.
You said this is like your least favorite, and I was literally about to say the same. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's kind of that's why I wrote a couple sentences. It's a possibility, but it's just kind of the most boring of them because now, and Tyler's brought it up a million times already, but the next one would be that maybe it has something to do with the fae or the fairy. Faerie, right?
Right.
And what if they're just the most modern mask of ancient fairy folklore?
Yep.
And, we've already kind of seen a lot of the parallels here. Changelings, will-o'-the-wisps, strange children outside the window, luring people into a potential world that they can't come back from. I mean, it kind of, now we're starting to sort of dip into sort of my favorite of all of these in starting with this one, and it makes sense, a lot of the things coming from the quote unquote old world in Europe and stuff. And, I didn't get to do this, but I would love to try to find if like old school, like island cultures in like Africa and stuff have things like this that they brought, like maybe in New Orleans and stuff, you know what I mean? If with like voodoo and hoodoo and all that stuff, if there's something fighting against,
I'm sure
these kind of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with those kind of cultures. They just look, and I mean I'm not part of these cultures, so I could be way off. But anything that I've sort of read up on, it sort of gets lumped into like bad spirits. And so honestly, I mean, oddly enough, it's kind of similar to how we're saying that we're lumping this into the fae and aliens and like that's all the same thing. Vampires, like, so yeah, maybe they're onto something by just saying it's all bad spirits.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I kind of saved this one for last, even though throughout this show, from the beginning of it, actually, Tyler's been trying to say this word out loud. But this is, and maybe to me, kind of the creepiest of them all, and certainly my favorite of all the options, which is that if the black-eyed children aren't demons, aliens, or just spooky folklore, what if they're jinn? So,
love it.
If this is your first time ever turning on our show and you don't know what we're talking about here, let me give a little brief explanation. In Middle Eastern and Islamic tradition, the jinn are these supernatural beings made of smokeless fire. They exist in a parallel world to ours, unseen, but capable of crossing over. They're tricksters, shapeshifters. Sometimes they appear human, sometimes animal. They're almost always deceptive. And most importantly, they often require an invitation to enter your home. Now, that doesn't sound familiar. You hadn't been paying attention today. Check this out. The jinn explanation kind of ticks almost all of the boxes here. We've got the invitation rule. They've got the fear and dread effect. Jinn are said to radiate overwhelming unease. They've got the energy feeding. Stories describe jinn draining life force and making people sick. And then there's the shape-shifting part, which what better disguise than innocent-looking children? Some researchers even suggest that black eyes themselves might be a slip in the disguise, the momentary sort of tell, kind of like what you were talking about with like
whole time,
hooves for feet. Now, for some reason, that always is just the funniest thing to me. Because I imagine like some guy at a dinner party, he's just the life of the party. Everybody's just having a good time. And he's like, all right, guys, got to see you later. And he's like, just his little hooves are just like tapping away.
He's like, and I said jabroni. And then he's like, see ya.
Yeah. And his shoes fall off and everybody's like, what in the world? And he's like, oh man, not again.
Well, what's interesting is speaking of jinn, I mean, this is kind of a little maybe on the nose, but speaking of jinn, I do remember like reading some stories to where like soldiers, that would be in, like what you were saying, that, you're seeing kids like just at the edge of like your base or whatever. But they would also talk about like seeing these women that, they would be like missing like fingers or even like the hoof thing. And it's like, I like I've said 100 times in this episode, I think it is like the tell. It's like the contract of being able to like exist and look like a human.
Right.
you have to have something that's off.
What's funny too is, as you were saying that, think about it this way too. You almost never hear about any of these crazy things, and they're being like, well, okay, they all look like crazy rednecks with, cut off sleeve shirts and no teeth in their head.
Right.
There's a reason why entities or anything like that are choosing children, sometimes beautiful females, to sort of lure people in, because you're not going to do that whenever you're some methed out freaking redneck.
Right.
Trying to do a magic trick in the freaking gas station parking lot.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think this same thing is that, we've discussed in past episodes of like in Indonesia and like the Philippines, where, and again, it's that disembodied voices theme to where, oh, there's a beautiful, clothless woman out in the forest late at night, and she's like calling your name. And so you go to check, and it's like, it's a naked lady, but she has like giant wings and claws, and
and you're a teenager and you're like, but I could live with that.
It's just like
she could fly us around places,
just like Pet Cemetery 2 with a wolf head. Who cares?
Oh man.
But no, to me again, like, I mean, that's,
I'm just saying, when I was a teenager, if that would have happened, I'd be dead.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, not a chance we'd still be here.
No.
But one of us may have a podcast where we reference it every show, of like, we had that one friend who saw the wolf lady.
Yeah, right.
But with the jinn, I think, there's a theme here, but I think all of that links into, the Watchers and like the Nephilim and those like sort of wandering, hungry spirits kind of thing. And I think it's that, like, I mean, it's kind of like even with like the exorcism stuff. It's like they, like back in the day, like I was talking about before, like even 15, 20 years ago, you had like monsters, cryptids, and ghosts. You didn't have all this like sort of spin-off stuff. And so like the stories of like, your famous like real life exorcism stories, they talk about how like the person's health is like rapidly declining, and they can't really like explain it. I mean, it's like they have all the crazy stuff where they're talking, a really deep like male voice, and they're like super strong, even though they're like a little kid, but like their health is like slow. Who's like the famous one? It's like Emily Rose.
Yeah.
Something like that. But again, I think that's happening because they're feeding on her life force, basically.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing with the jinn, though, is the idea that, they're born of smokeless flame and all of that. But it's the belief system is that, like, they believe that there's like full societies of them, and they're existing in like the other dimension.
Right.
And so it's not just like, oh, they're just like these monsters or these like demons. It's like, no, there's like there's supposedly like good ones and bad ones. And where do we hear that from? Well, the fairies and the brownies and the, it's like some are just canceled. And some are good. Some are like just sort of a little mischievous, but then there's others that are like really evil. And so again, I think it somewhere or somehow, if they all kind of fall under this umbrella.
Yeah. And we can't really mention the jinn without giving credit where credit's due. And that is because author and researcher David Weatherly, in 2011, he published the first major book dedicated to this subject called Black-Eyed Children. And he collected dozens of encounters from the earliest reports to modern variants, and then kind of stitched them together with folklore parallels and stuff. And he is actually, I think, from what I found online, the first to point out this jinn connection. And basically kind of like in a almost Jacques Vallée sort of way, saying that we've maybe been dealing with the same beings across cultures and centuries, just wearing different masks.
Exactly.
Whether that's fae in the Celtic lands, changelings in Europe, phantom children in Victorian times, jinn in the Middle East, and now in the digital age, black-eyed kids.
Oh, I mean, that's so well said. That's a perfect encapsulation of like everything that we've just said.
Yeah.
This whole episode.
You're welcome.
Actually, I think there was a David Weatherly interview that I heard, which to me, this is where I kind of feel like the jinn are. This is kind of a specific theme with that I feel like is kind of like just associated with the jinn. But there was a story to where, and again, I think it was David Weatherly. I think Linda Moulton Howe kind of like really leaned into like the jinn stuff, later on. But there was a story to where like these soldiers were coming back, and they were bringing, because there's like these bazaars over there, and they're like, oh well, I'm gonna get my wife her ring, or I'm gonna do this, and like I remember he had this one particular story to where this guy had a soldier who was in Afghanistan or somewhere over there, and at some bazaar or some kid came on the street and was sort of busking for money, selling little trinkets and stuff. And he was sold like a ring. And he said from that point on for like 6 months, his health was just horrible. He was sleeping like 12 hours, but when he woke up, he felt like he hadn't had any sleep at all. He just felt awful. He could feel his like short temper kind of kicking up. He was like angry, and he would just fly off the handle. And I think he ended up going to a priest maybe, or like maybe even like somebody in the military that was like a chaplain kind of thing. And I think maybe the chaplain had just asked the question, well, let's take this back to when you were serving. And he asked him, well, did you bring anything with you over? And he didn't even think anything of it until, and he said no. And then later, after he left, he like thought about it, and then he ended up going back to the person saying, actually, I didn't even think about this, but I had this ring that I bought over there. And ever since, it kind of makes sense. Ever since I have been back, I've felt this way. I felt awful. And like, I feel like I'm just changing in every way. And I think like the priest or the chaplain or whoever it was, I really can't remember the details, but they had him like get rid of it. And immediately everything sort of, like reversed. And so I feel like that is kind of a jinn thing, but I like the idea that that within itself is the transaction.
Right.
Like that's you asking, letting the black-eyed kids in. That's you paying money to take this ring that you're going to put on, and you're now carrying this like entity, spirit, whatever you want to call it, demonic, you're carrying it with you. So the transaction has been made. So now they're allowed to do whatever they want, and they're allowed to like feed off of you. And
I mean, I think that's kind of what we were saying earlier too, is that it's not the traditional sort of, that's where you have to be careful, because it's not that sort of knock, 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 open the door. Yeah, come on in. It's it kind of disguises itself in so many different ways.
Right.
And now I'm starting to sound like a 60-year-old when Elvis came on the scene. I feel like, because then it's like, well, it's in the music, kids. But it's like when you start to look at it through that lens, it starts to get a little scary. Now, that being said, I'm still going to listen to Oasis, okay? I'm not listening to like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I just watched a documentary this week on HBO. It's called like the Friday the 13th Murders. It's like a series, I think, that HBO is doing.
Oh.
And it's about the first one. At least I think there's going to be more episodes, but the first one is about this kid in the 80s, in the height of the satanic panic, who actually started taking interest in that evil stuff, and, as far as like getting the books and doing all that kind of stuff, and then ends up murdering people in his town.
Wow.
And anyways, all that to say, people in his town, his friends and stuff who knew him as a normal person, basically said like it has to be when he started diving down this stuff, man. You know? And so ultimately, I think this is one of those that we wanted to kick off the spooky season with, because it's so interesting. It's immediately not necessarily relatable, but I think that we've all been in those scenarios where something is just off, and we get that feeling of man, we got to get out of here. Something's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And to imagine it being some sort of creepy kid who's just standing at your door, tapping on your window or outside of your car, and then to see those black eyes staring back at you.
Yeah.
and the weird things that they say, just slightly wrong. I don't know. And the fact that, okay, so you've got, whether or not you're in a late night parking lot or you're a soldier in the far side of the world, the black-eyed kids, whatever they are, they still continue to haunt our imagination. And I think maybe that's the point. Maybe it doesn't matter whether they're demons, aliens, fae, or even, I don't know, internet legends that have now come to life.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is whenever you feel that feeling, or whenever you get a knock on your door at midnight and you hear a child's voice asking to come in, whatever you do, don't let them in.
Oh, yeah. And if you did let them in, we'd love to hear about it. Head on over to our Instagram where you can jump in the conversation, shoot us a DM. If it's more long form, shoot it to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. If you have other stories that you'd love to tell us, you can do so by sending them to those places or telling it in your own voice. And, if we like it, you could possibly become part of That Would Be Rad history. And we'll put you in an episode. We'll give you good sound design, and it'll be awesome. You can tell your family, your friends. And if you want to do that, you can do so at thatwouldberadpodcast.com. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it is over on our Patreon, The Rabbit Trail. It's more of what you love. It's a little looser, a little goosier, but it's the best possible way that you can kind of show your support and give your appreciation for all the hard work, the hours and hours of hard work Woody and I do every week. It's just us. We don't have a team of people helping us or a big, I guess it's kind of like a record label. I don't know what you would even call them. Those
just like a production team.
Yeah, like Tenderfoot and like those.
Man, going after them, huh?
Yeah, I'm coming after you. Actually, I love Radio Rental.
And they're in the Atlanta area. So if you're listening, hey, we'll consider a deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Send them a message.
Send
Tell
it
them
over.
that
Your people talk to us. We don't have people. We are our people.
We are
you
the
just
literal
send us an email. We'll look it over.
No, I've just started re-listening to Radio Rental, in the Halloween season because, and it's great. It's awesome. Anyway, we really appreciate all that you guys do for us. The constant love that you guys send us. It really does mean a lot to us. I guess this was a great little spooky kind of kickoff, and so I'm excited. You got anything else to say, Woody? All right, pal. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. Stay spooky. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. Clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were around already dead before you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.
Access granted.
Welcome back, gals and ghouls, to the
just no energy, none.
Dude, I had a lot of energy.
Nah. What is he, Frankenstein? Come on,
shut up.
Taking so long because he knows he didn't have enough energy. Go ahead.
Welcome back, guys and ghouls, to your favorite podcast. The podcast,
maybe a little too much energy on that one.
Oh, dude, you're killing.
I'm kidding.
You will f me up. We'll be here another hour.
Come on, you're right. Well, yeah. Is everything okay over there, man?
Yeah, I dropped my phone.
In his pants.
Sorry.
Shh.